circumstances, I have nothing of those moments where all eyes are on me. Like
Mm.
when there's a request, that's one thing, but when it's the special music and you don't have that, like I've woken up at night like cold sweat, not going back to bed type of nightmare.
I can't say I've had that one. Cubby, what have you had?
I've had the feeling lost, like I needed to be somewhere once on those off weekends, like you
Yep.
said. Like I feel like I need to be somewhere. I've had those. Um, not that particular one, Dan, where I didn't have the music, but something just like mostly for me, it's technical things going wrong, like a microphone going out, or just nobody. And of course, everybody has the one that nobody's dancing, But yeah, I've had those too. Those nightmares. I don't think. I think if you have a give a shit factor, you're gonna have nightmares. But if you don't care, you're not gonna be worried about it anyway. So I think people that are having nightmares have nightmares or have um, huge give a shit factors, and they don't want anything to go wrong, and so that's why they're kind of worrying about it, just even subconsciously.
But the big one I have had is not music or any. It's the one where I know I have a trip, a distance to go to get there. And it's like, okay, so I need to get there and I need to set up and I need to do this. And then something happens, whether I start putzing at something at home, but there's always something that I'm doing. And then I start working it's like, I'll never be able to get there in time. I'll never be able to get there in time to get things started. I can't, I can leave and I'm supposed to be playing in 5 minutes. What happened? There was, one time I had to go and pick up my shoes because my shoes were being cleaned. What? That was one of the times it was I had to go pick up a CD player, and this was like a year ago. I had to go pick up a CD player, and I went to the store, and it was like, and then I knew I just could never make it. But it's always that idea that I can't get there on time, even if I give myself. So, that might be one of the reasons why, okay, so I'm supposed to start at 3:00. I want to be ready to go by 2:00. I need to be setting up. I got to get there at 12:30. And then I leave like, the night before almost, that time sometimes, or at least it feels like that. It feels like that. But I was wondering, have you ever talked to anyone else? I mean, obviously, I think it's fairly common, but has anyone else ever really shared about that in your discussions? And
Yeah, my daughter
So
does. Go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
no, go. You got it. Go.
Yeah, my daughter talked about it just the other day. It's like, Dad, I just feel like I just had this nightmare. Like nothing went right, like at
yeah,
all. And she had the wrong notes for the wrong event. Just kind of like things like she could pull them back up on her iPad, but we're so there's things going through it. But yeah, she said she had the same nightmares or some nightmares as me as well.
yeah,
And I've had some friends that have reached out and kind of that idea of forgetting something like the add-ons,
mm,
right? So they have uplighting planned to be sold, and they wake up in the middle of the night because they're like, oh my gosh, like they thought like in their brain they were at the wedding and didn't have the uplighting, like didn't have whatever this add-on that was totally gonna make or break whatever was happening. But yeah, just kind of that same idea of just like, oh my gosh, like I'm forgetting something that I need to have.
that one, the question you put in there, I'll get to that one. So just to let you know that I got that, and I will add that, and we will get to that tonight. Yeah, that the idea of having that one usually doesn't hit me at night. I've had that moment or that feeling. Generally, where that has hit me is like you're eating lunch, the day before or something, and you're just kind of calm and everything, and all of a sudden you just get that anxiety hit or that right in the chest, and it's like the stress. It's like, did I forget? Do I have? Where's the contract? I need to go log into DJ Event Planner. I gotta find out if I'm forgetting something. Yeah, that one. That one gets to be kind of a anxiety driven area there for sure. Yes, so we all have some sort of nightmares when it comes to this stuff. Our subconscious works on us during the day and at night when you're doing this stuff. But I think, as Cubbie said, a lot of it is if you've got that, give a shit factor, you're going to be kind of fretting the details, because that's kind of what they pay us to do, is to fret the details. So hopefully they don't have to. So yeah, get a T-shirt made that says, give a shit factor 100.
100.
100, man. We got it. We got you there. So, all right, let's jump to our next question tonight. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about speakers. Now, this one, you guys we may not have. We'll see what we can do with discussion here. Somebody was talking about that they like their speaker brand, whatever the speaker brand, because they can go and they can push this speaker brand really, really loud, and they never see the limit lights or any of those things come on, and they were so excited because they can push these speakers really hard, in their view. They don't like this other brand, which we're not going to name, because they say, oh, the limit lights kick in on those way too early, and they shouldn't be that way. When someone comes up and says something like that to you, and there is a distinct price difference between the first speakers and the second speaker, how would you respond to that?
Go for it, Cubbie.
For me and my DJs, I like to have that limit on there. And the reason being is it tells them that they're going to be pushing too hard. They might not have the experience to know when it's going to blow, or they're pushing it too hard for too long. So I always tell mine, like, look, do not ride the limit don't ride the limit, period. It shouldn't, but yeah, I love the limit sign on mine, because I said, let's my newer DJs or my less experienced DJs know that they're pushing them too hard, without that. And I wouldn't want to push anything too hard anyway, for, not worry about the limit notification.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I always come back to is, that limit is there for a reason. So if you've got company B has the limit and company A doesn't, it doesn't mean that company A's speaker is that much better. It just means that it doesn't have that piece to protect itself. And really, that's what we want to have, right? You don't want to be blowing speakers and having to replace parts or replace the speaker because it did something it shouldn't have, right? Or you didn't know what the settings were to make sure. And in the heat of the moment, I get it, right? You want to get that extra sound, right? Maybe by the end of that, you have ear fatigue, so you started cranking it up even more, and next thing you know, it blows, right? I thank goodness for those ones where I've had the limit, because I'm like, oh, I'm apparently pushing this too hard, and it gets frustrating. I get it, because I can still remember, like, I did this one prom and I was running my subs and I kept looking, I looked down, I'm like, man, I don't feel like I'm getting much bass, but I'm limiting. So I knew I was doing something wrong. Something was wrong in my setup, like along my chain, where I was pushing too much in one and not getting enough of the right setup to do that. So go back and check out a Ben Stowe video, because I can't remember which the title is. John, maybe you can help me out, where he addresses, like, having your gain set up so that way you're getting more sound without hitting the limit, rather than trying to push it too hard and getting the limit.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about gain structure in that, and that definitely will help. But you get to a point is, depending upon the speaker company, some of them have limits, some of them have, a different DSP, a clip light in there. So there's a variety of different things with that. And it depends on the company, the brand, and what they're doing with that, because there are different terminologies. They don't use the same thing, and they don't act the same way. Our friends at Electro Voice, one of the big speakers that a lot of people complain about, somebody's actually talking about in the chat room, is the ETX subs. They're like, oh, that comes on so quick, and that's kind of what Dan was mentioned, hearing that also. Well, the way Electro Voice has their limiting capability is that it starts to kick in, the audio goes up, and then it starts to kick in, and it starts to take a little bit off. It still continues to go up, but it starts to take a little off from it, so that it won't spike and blow everything up. It still will get a little bit louder as the limit light goes on. When the limit light comes on and it's flickering on, that's just telling you it's engaging. It's like having a really long yellow signal light. It's kind of what it is. You get the flashing signal, yellow light. That's really what it is. Just telling you that something's coming. And if you continue, you're going to probably have to deal with it, or you're going to have to pull your volume back down. But right now, you can still go. You can still do what you need to do when it's in that flickering stage and it's not on solid. When you get to the point and you push it too hard, it's going to be on solid, and it's going to be telling you that, okay, now you've reached the point. Most of the time with the ETX series is that when you're pushing it that hard, because of that gain structure Dan was referring to not be set up right, you're probably now almost pushing your board too hard, to the point where you might be clipping the signal coming out to it. That's what's going to blow up your speakers more than over pushing the speakers with clean signal. If you throw a dirty signal into that speaker at that volume, you're going to have problems. Now that's one company. Now this other company, they may not have it till you get to the point where your volume is going up and up and up and up, and all of a sudden the light might come on, and boom, right there you're at like a hard ceiling. And if you go past that ceiling, it could be really problematic. There's 2 companies out there that do this that I know of for surely. That it's basically there's nothing. It's like, woohoo, we're having a party, we're having a great time, and all of a sudden the lights come on, and if I push beyond, I have shredded speaker all over my dance floor. That's how they do it. Now, as you're doing the 2, if you had them set on the same and you were pushing volume-wise, this one would limit and this one would not. And it would seem to get louder and such as this one started to get louder. So there would be a perceived loudness difference for a bit, but one of them's going to get up here and it's going to die, and the other one's not. So there's factors with it. As Cubbie said, having that light come on and helping people understand that is a point where you can't push any harder is great for newer DJs, because some of them don't understand what they think that bass, that mumbly, blowing woofer sound is great. Yay, let's make the speakers sound like that because that's what my car speakers sound like. No.
Could you imagine blowing a speaker in the middle of a reception and having to either just shuts down automatically until it cools down like an EV? Could you just imagine? I couldn't imagine. That's why I like the limited signal.
Back in the day, that happened to us when we were running separate amplifiers for your amps, down below the table. You'd get into a warm night and you're pushing pretty hard, and it happened. Gosh, I bet probably 25, 30 times over my career that there were just nights where all of a sudden the subs would go on, and you look down and it's like, oh, the amplifier's in protection because it overheated. You wait, and you wait. And because those were PV amps at the time, and there's a volume knob on the front, so you turn the gain knob down a ways. So when it kicks back in, that it's not back full bore, full volume, and it comes back, and you can start working it back up, and then you get to the point where you screwed it up, and then do it out again. You got a red line to headline. That's funny. Corey, I've got to say, Corey said, my son used to say, you got a red line to headline. I fired him. That's dedication, Corey. That's dedication.
That's the quote of the night right there.
That's funny. Yeah, especially when your son and their children are doing it. Okay, let's jump to our next question tonight here, guys.
Flip-flops.
All right, for our next one, people like the shoe game. A lot of people are still getting back into it again in some areas. Some people are getting away from it. But one thing that's kind of disgusting is if you do it during the dance, those shoes are pretty, yeah. So you don't want to do that. And somebody was asking, what are some options? Instead of using shoes, what other props would you use to differentiate between your bride and groom? And then even situations right now you're going to run into where you have a groom and a groom or a bride and a bride. So you've got a variety of different things, and people are still wanting to have fun with a shoe game type of activity. So, gentlemen, what are some suggestions? What have you seen? What have you used?
You go first, because I know what you're doing, and I've got a few other directions to go.
Nice. I use black and white flip-flops, Old Navy, $3 flip-flops, black and white or black if we have a same-sex couple. I've seen other ones in the past, but in the past, but I'm gonna let Dan share what he uses because I don't want to step on anything he has. But Old Navy black and white flip-flops, they're very flat, fit in my case very nicely. I will give you a hint that I like to do at the end of the shoe game really quick, is I like to invite one of the brides and groom's parents up there unannounced, like they have no idea. The bride and groom, of course, approve it, but then I invite their parents up and see their eyes and ask them about 7 questions, and it is hilarious. I'm like, well, John and Lori, how long many of you guys been married? We've been married for 32 years. So you guys got to be pretty good at this game, right? So then we start asking the questions. But inviting the parents up after the bride and groom without them having any knowledge. The bride and groom, of course, approve it, but their parents had no idea is hilarious. It's a good twist.
Nice. So like Cubbie, I do use the flip-flops. That's been my go-to for a little while now, from this kind of same standpoint of just like disgusting, like don't take your shoes off type of thing. But some of the other things that I've either gone the direction of, or I've considered going, or I've even just heard of. One time I've also done, like when I've been at a brewery, I've had couples do their drinks. So how many times have you gone to the bar or at least you're by the bar and you see like her drink, his drink, or or his whatever it is, but they have their own signature drinks. So they each have those, and then they kind of hold them up, and then I've gone so far with a couple of them where, well, if you don't agree, then it's time to take a drink. Like you turn it into a drinking game. You got to be a little careful with that one, but still having their own signature drinks. I've had, especially for same-sex couples who want to go this direction, if they're using two color tones, picking up something like even just putting them on a stick with like a piece of cardboard type of idea, almost like a photo booth prop type of piece. But because there's the two different colors maybe that they're using for their wedding, you just say, okay, this is Susie's and this is, Samantha's, right? So you've got their whatever their color is, and you identify it that way. I've had some people, when you're having heterosexual couples, do a Barbie and Ken doll. So that's another direction that you can go. So they're holding up dolls as opposed to shoes, as opposed to something along those lines. So those have been kind of the ones that I've seen stand out. You really can get as creative as even like interests that they have.
Yes. Yeah.
So dig into getting to know who they are. Like you could do college mascots if they went to different colleges. You could do. I had one couple, and I didn't go this direction because we did something else because they didn't want the shoe game, but they were teachers at a school, and one was science and another one, I think the other one was English or something like that. And so one idea I had, kind of a thought, was you could hold up a science piece and like a book, you know what I mean, like something that's an interest that could really also work into that factor.
And I think that interest one is the direction I would highly recommend, especially when using, whether it doesn't matter the couple. Because if you can find something that really fit and most of the crowd knows it. I had one situation where one was hard hat and one was cowboy hat. One loved horses, one was a master welder. Everybody knew it. So it was a very simple way to do it. I've got sock monkeys. Those are used quite a bit. I've got the baseball hats that one says bride, one says groom. That are white and black. There's a variety of things, but I think the ones that are most successful are the ones where it fits. One time, she was International Tractor and he was John Deere Tractor. So you have a red tractor and a green tractor. So they held up for the red tractor when it was in. Yeah. So I think that idea of finding something is certainly the best, and you can find that out from their conversation. One time there was someone who liked to cook, and I don't remember. Oh, cook and fish. So one was a soup ladle, and the other one was a little mini fishing rod, like an ice fishing jig, fishing rod. Ice fishing is where we go out in the middle of winter, and the lakes are frozen over. There's this thick layer of ice, and we drive out there with a car. We drill a hole through it, and then we use a short fishing rod to catch fish. So
that was an international.
Where John lives, he does that in May.
I do that. Yeah, I just yesterday finished up ice fishing for the winter. It's great. So, all right, let's jump to our next question, gentlemen. Next, talking about storage of gear between events. Do you need to have it in an insulated building, or can a person store it in a garage that is all sealed up and dry? Where can you store your gear? So, gentlemen, let's talk about how we store our stuff, and then we can talk about what should happen in different climates.
Dan, go ahead. You kick it off. I did last one.
So the key here is really going to be the dry piece that John just kind of alluded to, right? The humidity is what's going to be detrimental to any system. So whether you put it in a trailer, whether you put it in a garage, whether you put it in a storage unit, whatever happens to be the case, try and make sure that it's in a unit that's going to be as dry as possible. That's really going to be key. Does it need to be climate controlled? No. But if you have that luxury and you have that flexibility, I think that's the easiest, especially when you're talking about winter events. I know when I've had my events, in my trailer, and I'm traveling a long time to get to the event and it's cold out, you have to allow it longer to warm up so that you don't have a problem. So whether that's winter or whether that's summer, you still have some of those potential problems if it's in those conditions for a long time. But I was told one time, you think about how it is getting to you, right? Like they're in a warehouse it's been on a, it's been on a truck shipping to you, right? Like, it's not temperature controlled getting to you. It doesn't necessarily have to be temperature controlled in storage.
Right. So Dan,
We
where do you store your stuff, Dan?
yeah.
You didn't answer the question, Dan. Where do you store your stuff?
You're right. I didn't answer the question because I've got neighbors. No,
In the house, in the garage. I mean, are you out in your trailer out in the street? That kind of.
yeah, no, most of my important gear I keep in my basement right here. It's actually stored right over there. Microphones always come in. That's just microphones, batteries, laptops, that kind of stuff always comes in. When I have some of my speakers, I do have a storage area that I will keep some of those things in, especially speakers that I don't use every event.
Excellent. Cubbie.
I would have to say during March till about November, out in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I live in the Midwest and we get some extreme sometimes with the cold, extreme cold, and I bring in all the electronics, bring in all the mixers, all the everything every single time. During December, January, February, March, just super extreme when it gets 20 below or it gets 10 below or something. I bring them in just for safety reasons and up lights and everything like that. Just so there's nothing in the extremes, but I'd have to say March through November because it doesn't get really too cold during that time. Nothing extreme. They stay out in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
We have totes and bins, and every DJ has their own little tote and own little bin, and they just come and grab their stuff.
Off they go. When it comes to batteries, the idea of cold weather is horrible. So that's, mics and bringing things in, lights and such. But I would contend, guys, that in our neck of the woods in the summer, we can get really humid, and we can get humid for 3, 4, or 5 weeks at a time to the point where we're, Robin's weather in Florida, we get that for a period of time over the summer. And from my past experience with gear and things, excluding the super cold and batteries, otherwise, when it comes to just gear, as Dan was saying, they ship it and it's not in climate controlled. The cold really doesn't hurt the gear. It's when it comes in, you've got to basically let it warm up and dry off and get ready to go. But in the summertime, if you've got gear that has been stored in a dry area, but the humidity can get to it, I have speakers that are 6, 7 years old that have screws that are all rusted on the speakers because they were stored in a non-climate controlled. It was dry. It was just a building that, pole shed, a cemented out pole shed, and they were on the shelves there, and, everything, other tools and lawnmowers and things are stored in there, but the speakers and some of those screws and different things have got rust on them because they were in humidity throughout the summer. So I think that can be probably your biggest concern when it comes to that is how can you keep it ready to use, whether it's battery and you got to store it that way. But humidity, I think, is a real killer, and you've got to figure out how you can keep it. And when they ship it, I mean, we've all opened up the box with our new piece of DJ gear. It's like, woohoo, look at this. Okay, open a plastic bag. Woohoo, look at this. And then there's that little pack of silica. They're trying to do that. And literally, I have a storage container next to the office here that we bought last fall, and I have some DJ gear that is stored in there, but it's in big sealed totes that have the rubber gasket, and they have like 3 or 4 packs of silica, the big packs in there. I threw those in there, and I ended up opening one up. Let's see, I put them in November. I opened one up a couple of weeks ago, and everything was just perfect in there, and it was all nice and dry. But if I wouldn't have that, I wouldn't leave them in that storage container for summer because of the humidity. So, yeah, weather. Now, for where I store, this building behind me is climate controlled, and that's where 99% of my DJ gear is. I back the truck in. It's air conditioned in the summer. It's heated in the winter because I don't like to get cold and I don't want to get sweaty when I'm throwing gear around. I'm a wimp. All right, let's jump.
I mean, if it can be climate controlled, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think if you had that just for your own comfort.
Oh, for sure. And this isn't the way it was for, the first. Let's see, my daughter's 17 now, so it wasn't this way for the first 17 years, roughly. I think we had the show, or for the first, before she was born, was when we built this when she was born. So prior to that, it was DJ trailers, and we bring in the critical components, and they sat in the house garage, which was a heated garage with the whole front end of the garage. Lori's like, how can I put my car in here? There's DJ gear all over up here. It's like, yeah, sorry. Let's jump to our next question here, guys. So a person asked about today's photographers, some newer photographers are kind of venting a little bit that they don't come up and say hi and introduce themselves like some of the older established photographers would do. And I've seen this myself with different wedding, other vendors at the wedding, whether it's the videographer, the photographer, the photo booth. It used to be that, we'd kind of go and say hi. They'd come up and say hi and introduce themselves and let me know if they needed something. I don't have that. I don't see that as often, and they were saying that they weren't seeing it either. And I was wondering, I have a way that I deal with this, and I wanted to kind of throw it out there, is if this is a thing, and I think you guys are saying that you've seen it too, how do you deal with it? Let's give some advice with this. So, Cubbie, this is your turn to start this one.
Oh, shucks. Yeah, I do see that a lot with a lot of younger photographers. And I'm not trying to pigeonhole any sex, but I think female photographers, sometimes they don't come up all the time. And especially if they got a second with them, if they've got two of them, they're all off to themselves, right? They'll come up and go ahead, they'll introduce themselves, but that is about the extent of it. And then I give them a piece of paper and say, look, here's the batting lineup for today. It's literally the timeline. And I say, here's the timeline. I'm not going to do anything. Let me know where you're sitting. You're more than welcome to put your bag behind my, underneath my table. But, because I have a stand, so they also put me tables sometimes. Try to be as much as many as accommodating. Ask them to send me pictures afterwards. Make sure they please watermark it, so I can mark it with you and things. But yeah, I don't know what it is, but younger photographers just do not talk. And if they've got somebody with them, they don't come up and talk either. They just do staying off by themselves.
What have you noticed, Dan?
There's a couple occasions I'll say where I do run into that. A lot of times I kind of beat them to the punch, because by the time I get there, they've already been running around and doing their thing. So a lot of times once I see them, I'll just kind of grab their attention real quick. They're in the midst of doing something. I'm just like, hey, you just want to say hi real quick. And when you get a chance, come over, we'll talk about the order and everything else. I send it to them a lot of times ahead of time. So they've already kind of had some of that conversation with me via email. So it's not so much, I think for some of them, we've already talked, right? We don't necessarily have to worry about that. But I will also say that a lot of the time I'm working with the exact same photographers. I have a set of probably 15 of them that I am working with almost every time that I'm out. It's rare that I get somebody new. So a lot of times when they show up, we're talking, right? We're having a good time because we're friends, and we hang out in that aspect. And, we're getting a selfie with each other by the time the night's all said and done, just to say, hey, it was great working together again. Love to see these, the set. So yeah, I think, but to kind of Cubbie's point with like the newer generation, a lot of times the newer generation is very much a textual type of generation, right? Everything is done via, words on a phone. So I think sometimes that face-to-face heat gets lost because some of those skills are not what they were to some older generations. And so sometimes I think if you have that, if you haven't communicated prior to that day, that might be why you're running into some of those pieces as well.
Yeah, I think you're definitely hitting a nail on the head there with that idea. Yeah, I think you're also dealing with you're dealing with some people who are introverts, and it's not that way. They're not wired that way. And many creative people, i.e. photographers, can kind of, if a person is going to pigeonhole, are they going to be more charismatic or more of an introvert, or, extrovert, introvert? They're probably going to fall more to the introvert side of it. So there's just some things I think that are all coming together, and it becomes one of those situations that it should, to a point, almost be our job, because we're usually there before they are, because they are off taking pictures and they get there. And, most of the time when I see somebody with a camera, there's many times I'm shaking hands to, Aunt Bessie, who's just taking pictures because she's got a big camera. It's like, hey, are you the photographer? Are you Jenny? No, I'm Aunt Bessie. I've got a big camera. That's pretty much how the conversation goes. But then when Jenny does get there, my way I like to break the ice is have this really, really, the maniacal stare across the room, that. And then she's like, oh, that person wants to talk to me and, become my best friend. I can see it. That's the way I like to start the works every time.
And then she runs and hides.
Yeah, sure. But no, the idea
you're-
of going and introducing and shaking hands, fist bump, whatever they're comfortable with, but just to do that. And then, as Cubbie said, is that here's kind of what's going to happen tonight. Where are you going to be? This, that, and the other thing. See where you're seated. Are you going to need? Do you need anything from me? If there's anything, we're here to make each other's night better, type of thing.
What's big around here lately is these photography like groups. Like they got like 10 photographers in like a certain one company, and then there's like 4 companies, and they have like a stable of photographers, and they're photographers that are just starting out that can't build their own business, so they're kind of working for this little bit of a larger company that will put all these photographers out. So I'll see the name ABC photography or XYZ photography. Oh, I get to work with this person, and no, it's one of their people from their stable. So it's hard to build up. Like I said, sometimes Dan relate the relationships, but I do have, like with Dan, I work with a lot of photographers and know them, and we have great relationships. And all the older ones that have been around the industry for a long time are very personable. It's just kind of like, to me, it's the newer ones, the mom photographers that just got a camera and want to take pictures, and they're just not very, I haven't learned how to market or network yet. I mean, because I can send them a lot of business, like you guys can.
Mm-hmm.
If I enjoy working with them and they get their product out on time,
they do a nice job. Yeah,
sure. I definitely would refer them.
Probably the one that is still my biggest pet peeve when it comes to photographers is one who treats their clients well and doesn't talk dirt about them behind their back, as far as. Yeah. When they're like, yay, oh, smile there, Bobby, great, okay. And, he was drunk and hitting on you earlier. And then, oh, Susie, you look so great. Do you know that she is the biggest so-and-so ever? And it's like, oh, what? You're saying this? Yeah. Anyway. All right, we got a lot of questions lined up here, guys. So we're going to jump to our next one here. Somebody was asking a question about the ETX speakers. In a past show, we talked about hooking them up, and we'll get into that in just a second. But guys, the part of that is hooking it up to your board. And Ben had talked about hooking your subs up to a different output than the main output. Have you ever done that in a mobile show situation, or have you always just basically out from the main to the subs to the tops?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I let me phrase that, because for me, I like to be able to just run as few wires as possible. So for me, I can go right to the one. In fact, I have power that connects to the one, what they call pigtails, right? So that the one plugs in, the other one plugs into it. So I do that. I have run remote speakers off of the booth output and that kind of thing, which is different.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else always goes one from one to the other.
Well, is that the way you do it, Cubbie?
Yeah. Easy peasy.
And pretty much I think that is, and there's two rules of thought when it comes to hooking to the booth out specifically, is that there's many controllers, specifically the one that I use the most and Dan is familiar with is the 7000, the Denon 7000. That particular one, if you run the booth out to your subwoofers as an example, one of the big advantages of that is that you can not have the microphone in the subwoofer feed, and the 7000 does that natural, or it's the default is no microphone in that sub feed, if I'm not mistaken. So what you're able to do with that is everything that would have gone through the subs from the microphone, which is generally kind of a feedbacky weird little anomaly, none of it's there because there's no microphone going to the subwoofers. That's really the only time a person wants to have that, unless you have an unusual situation where your tops and your subs are not matched up whatsoever. And what I mean by that is that if you start the night out at one volume and your tops and you're getting that volume the same and are hitting everyone the same, then as the night goes on, if for some reason your top doesn't have the same gain ability and the subs all of a sudden are hitting people harder than your tops are, then it's one of those things that you either are turning on your 3-band EQ, or you're going to your subs and turning them down, or if you've got the booth, the subs on the booth, you can bring that down, or an auxiliary send. So it's a microphone thing, or it's to give you the ability to bring that sub down, that sub sound down a little bit without having to walk out there and turn the back of the subs down. I have at times had to go out at a show and turn my subs down a notch or two, not because they were so much overriding the tops. It's just that kind of bouncing back to that limit. The thing is, the limit light was coming on a little bit too hard. And if I went and took the subs and took the gains down 2 notches, I was able to push my sound a little bit more. The limit light was still flickering, but then I had bigger tops at the time, and the tops were able to give me more sound pressure. Otherwise, it was getting to the point where I wasn't able to push as hard as I wanted to. So I would use it in that situation, and that's pretty much only. And I mean, in all my time of doing it, I think I've done it 3 or 4 times is it. Most of the time, it's right to that side, left to that side. And truthfully, I run mono on my board anyway because I don't like the stereo. I don't like hearing AC/DC with the music over here and the voices over here. Don't like it, so we don't do it. So, and off we go. Okay. Price on ETX, you got to contact them back at the office, nlfxpro.com. They're going to be able to get you the best pricing on ETX speakers. On our shows, we just talk about them. We don't actually sell them because that's not our jobs. That's Ben's. Okay, next question. So concerts, DJ receptions, everywhere we perform, we put the speakers in front of, basically it's like, here we are, the speakers, and it's into the crowd. The speakers are in front. As soon as we go to the ceremony, we're putting the speakers in back. Why do we do that? We put those,
I don't. I put them up front.
Okay, Dan can't answer this question. Cubbie, so...
Sorry.
No,
I think... Go ahead. Dan.
Yeah. We did. So Dan, let's flesh his out. So why don't you put your speakers in back? Because you've seen pictures. I mean, let's face it. Mike Walter's got pictures from 1,000 weddings, and you never see that speaker from the front of the room. It's always in back.
Well, and I think a lot of people put them in the back because that's where you are, right? Like that's the easiest thing. Like your setup's here, so you run it to there. And I've had a lot of people even go to the simplistic ceremony setup where everything's on a single tripod. You hook a tray onto the tripod and you go right into the speaker and it's all right there. But what I've often noticed is, and this is, sound is coming from the front. Right, like the officiant is up front, and if you're having a bride and groom, the bride is walking from the back to the front, so she wants to hear the music the whole way through. So if I have my speakers sitting up front and I put one on each side, shooting at the crowd, all the sound is coming from where it's supposed to. I can be anywhere I need to be. I use in-ear monitor systems for wireless send, so I can put my speaker where I need it to be. Without having to worry about where I am. But shooting it from the front makes it a little bit nicer. That's why I do it. And I started doing this. This is my 2nd year now doing it. And I've had videographers who are very happy about what I'm doing. I put them far enough out so they're not in the pictures, but yet the sound is coming the way that it should be. And so much easier to control feedback because my speaker isn't pointing right at the microphone on the officiant.
Cubbie, where do you put these speakers when you're doing your ceremonies?
Where there's a lot of different venues around here that sometimes I'm in the side, sometimes I'm in the front, sometimes I'm in the back. It all depends on where the power is most easy accessible. Like so there's a couple that they're literally on the side. I'm just projecting from the side over here, and sometimes I'm in the back. I just adjust to where they've always done it. Mm-hmm. Basically. I'm not there to make any waves or do anything different. If they say they normally do it in the back, I just always do it in the back. If they say do it on the side, I do it on the side. Yeah,
and I've got a similar situation with some of the venues that have sound on a regular basis. They're like, we always set it up over here, and that's basically following along. One of the schools have thought of putting it in the back, and Dan, you kind of mentioned the feedback situation. Is that if I'm using a lapel mic and if I have the speakers way on the other side of the crowd, that maybe I can get more gain before feedback when it comes to the lav mic. Or you have the situation like today that we saw during the ceremony, is that when a person went to go speak into the microphone and we've all seen this, they start talking and are thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so loud, and they start pulling that microphone away. Whereas when the speakers were on the other end of the room and all the guests were between the speakers and the person talking, maybe the guests could hear before they would, hear better. That there was many rules of thought of why they would turn up in the back. But in reality, there's an echo problem, or there can be an echo or a slight delay. And if you've ever experienced that, been in a longer room where you're 100 feet away from your speakers, and you feel like you need to start talking slower because their words are starting to feel like they're on top of you, it's weird. And if someone's not experienced when it comes to speaking that way or hearing themselves, they're going to get freaked out. And then I don't need a microphone. I talk loud. And then it's like, well, I just set this whole sound system up and you're being a putz. But anyway, ideally though, I think the, Dan's theory is with the being able to control it and aim the speakers properly and do it is the best way to do it. But I too have the same situation, Cubbie. Sometimes you can.
I would say
sometimes you can't.
I would say also, as an industry, we've come a long way with this, because I think one of the other problems was, exactly as Cubbie's mentioned, power availability and cable runs and things of that nature. We're doing all these outdoor events, and 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we really didn't have a good battery type of situation, short of like hooking something up to like said speakers. Now between the Everse 8, between the Bose S1, the JBL systems, like there are these battery powered speakers that now allow you to put where's going to make the most sense, as well as multitude of different wireless battery style wireless hookups that'll last for a ceremony plus. So I would encourage you from an audio standpoint to start thinking about some of those things, especially if you already have some of those speakers. You might be a lot closer to being able to put it in different spots than what you're used to and get a better experience than what you've had in the past.
Excellent. Gentlemen, we're going to sneak one more question in quick before we have to send everyone to the Hanging with Howie, which is up next. We put the link in the chat. You guys will be able to get to that in just a second. We're going to do one more question. Okay, our last little question. This one's going to be kind of a fun one. Your very first audio mixer that you used for your DJ system. Cubbie, you said you had one. What was it?
Yeah. Well, I was working for somebody else because everybody starts, working for somebody else. And I had an American Audio system with a Denon 2 CD player down below. And that's exactly what I had. So we always had like 4 or 5 CDs, whatever route you're going to go. You're going to pray that they're not scratched, And but yeah, the American Audio 4-channel mixer with the Denon CD player. Dual CD player, not a fiver, just a dual. Yeah. And then, like I said, you pulled them out of that binder, you prayed it wasn't scratched.
Oh man, Dan, what was your first one?
First mixer, Gemini.
Oh yeah.
I don't even remember the model at this point. It was a 19-inch rack mount mixer, and very similar to Cubbie's. Like we had the CD players that were that I had tucked into there as well. But yeah, it was a Gemini system.
Very first one was a PV, because an audio shop was about an hour from us, and they were huge PV dealers. It was a 9072, which was a 4-channel mixer, whatever. But it was actually a sweet little mixer, nothing like what you would have today. And so noisy. Thinking back to it, we actually found one of them about 10 years ago, and we hooked it up, and it was so noisy comparatively to better quality stuff. But that price for that very first one, is $325 we paid for that mixer. And then I think when the last couple of mixers we bought some nice Newmark ones at the time, and I think we were like $250, and they were so much better quality, sound quality wise. Crazy world. Gentlemen, that's it. Hanging with Howie's up next. DJNTV.com/chill. Tomorrow morning, I've got a tips video up. If you missed Bill Herman's little session today, it was actually kind of a fun one, talking about a musician that made a huge sacrifice in World War II. If you haven't heard that story, go listen to today's Bill Herman's little thing. It's not much DJ related. It's just kind of more of a history lesson. And I did not even know that little story. It was interesting to hear the sacrifice this person made and their how they were instrumental in helping, and yet some of the music that we have played came from this person. It was pretty. I did not know that. So, and then Wednesday morning, Dan's got his Wednesday morning tip video, and then some of our Howie show and Brian show. Those go on record Monday and Tuesday nights, and then Wednesday nights we have one of the recordings that from each of those that go up. So, yay! I think that's it. Dan, are you going to take us home, and I'm going to get these ready to flip over.
If I don't, does that mean we hold Howie hostage? Everybody, thank you so very much for taking time out of your holiday to join us. There was a lot of people giving some things in the chat and some new names that I'm not familiar with from before. So thank you very much for tuning in and spending time with John, Cubbie, and myself. Have yourself a great night. Be safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye,
everybody.